as we lead up to the release of our book, Solopreneur Business for Dummies, which saying that out loud, Joe, is still so crazy to say. But the entire book is based on a framework, the Solopreneur Success Cycle, that Joe, you actually came up with. So I figure I helped, but this is your brainchild. And I feel like we should start with an overview. Listeners, we are going to kind of do a series when it's just Joe and I over the next couple of months, kind of diving into highlights that we discuss in the book. We're not going to give away everything. Obviously, we want you to buy it, but just really the framework behind the methodology of everything that we're discussing. Again, it's the Solopreneur Success Cycle. Joe, why don't you dive into it? You start. It's your baby. Let's hear.
Yeah, well, let me first say that, this is not going to be like we'll give you half of the info and leave you hanging. There's so much in the book about getting into the details and nitty gritty that we can give you the whole picture here. And still it's going to be worth buying the book. So I'm not worried in the least bit. The whole aspect of the Solopreneur Action Plan, which is covered through the book, and there's a link to download your own copy so you can create your own. Basically, it's a business plan concept for solopreneurs that kind of cuts through the nonsense that you don't need for a one-person business. But anyway, so I'm gonna not leave anything high level out of here. Obviously, not going too far in the weeds because these are short podcasts. But so the Solopreneur Success Cycle is defined by 3 phases. Okay, the first one is getting started, starting your business. A lot of you listening have probably already gone through that phase. If you looked at what we put together here, maybe you'd say, "Gee, I wish I had done it that way." I hope you'd say that. But then the second phase is doing, but while you're doing, you're learning. So you're running your business and you're learning what's working, especially what's not working, or what could be better, or what maybe you want to be different for your life. And then lastly is the improving phase, where after you figure out all the things that are going wrong or not going the way you want them to, or could be better, you implement some of those improvements. And then you go back to doing. So it's a cycle. You're going around in a circle, right? And you're going to put a link to an article that shows these graphics, right, Carly?
Yeah, we actually have an entire page on our website that we'll link to in our show notes.
But these 3 phases are broken up actually into 8 different steps. And the first step is called goals and success. We call it step 0 because nobody ever does this, right? Everybody says, "Oh, I'm going to start a business." They start a business. And the next thing you know, there's a good chance they're running a business they don't like running, or isn't doing what they need it to do, or isn't making enough money for them, or whatever. So we start off with this we call step 0, defining what your goals you have for starting a one-person business, right? It's not about becoming a billionaire, I hope, because if you do, you want to have employees to do that. So there's something else about your life or something about what you want that a one-person business serves. Once you've got those goals defined, you have to envision your business, and we try to encourage people to think outside the box a little bit. Just because you're a CPA doesn't mean you have to go and do accounting. Maybe you want to do something related, but not, just a freelance accounting person or bookkeeper. So there's that step. And then when you decide what you want to do, you got to plan it. You got to figure out the details of how you're going to get it up and running. Next step, which is step 3, is getting set up. Right? You got to set up the business that you've now planned. Once you've got it set up, now you're in business, right? So now you're running, executing, learning. That is step 4. And as you execute and learn for a while, at some point you decide, hey, I'm going to step back and rethink this business a little bit. Or maybe, we have a step 5 called refine, or maybe reimagine. So it's refine, reimagine, depending on how the business is going. It's, a couple of tweaks you need, you refine it. My God, this isn't making enough money, or I am hating my life, or gee, I see a way better opportunity. Then you might reimagine it. Go through that process of refining or reimagining the business, decide what you're actually going to do, which is step 6. And finally, step 7 is adjust. Make the adjustments you've decided to make. At that point, you're going back to executing and learning. So the idea here is that you have this process of starting, running, and improving your business continuously. That make sense?
It makes sense to me, but I'm very biased.
Yeah, look at the pictures on the link from the show notes, because that will tell a much better story than my describing this thing. But it basically looks like a kind of a spiral that circles back on itself. So let's just dig in really briefly. Why? So it's a flywheel because you should never be done, right? You should never be done with your business. Something's changing. You're changing. The world is changing. Your customers are changing. Something's going on out there, and so it's always good to have a process of thinking about what you're doing and making adjustments of some kind, right? Second thing I would want to stress is that step 0 is the secret weapon, right? If you don't decide why you're doing this and what you want out of it, you're going to find yourself building a business that isn't quite serving what you hoped for. And Carl, you're going to talk about that a lot, I think, in the next podcast episode.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the reason we did this is that trial and error is expensive. It costs money, it costs time, it costs just brain damage, as we used to call it. You just, your brain hurts when you make a mistake and you have to turn around. So are there some things we can do to avoid making the rookie mistakes and get this thing right or closer to right the first time? So that's what that's about. I want to assure people that this is not like some MBA framework that I, took and tweaked. This is a ground up. I didn't even look at any other processes when I came up with this. It was over a summer. It was the summer that you were actually having your youngest, I think, if I remember. And I just kind of put I started a solopreneur business. I started a second one, had been an entrepreneur. I said, what's different? And just came up with this for solopreneurs. And so that covers the the Solopreneur Success Cycle at a high level and why. Do you have anything to add or anything you want to ask me, Carly?
No, I think this makes a lot of sense. I mean, I would encourage, like you said, I would encourage everybody to click on the link in the show notes to our to the page on our website that has the diagrams and everything. I think you'd find that really helpful. And just refer to that. Like I said, we're doing this series, and that'll be helpful throughout each of these episodes. But whether you buy the book or not, which we certainly hope you do, these short segments that we're going to be sharing with you will hopefully be helpful in your business, regardless of if you have that supplemental piece of literature, but helpful regardless. But speaking of which, next time we're going to be talking about those goals and that step 0, so be sure to tune in. And of course, as always, listeners, leave that 5-star review, share this episode with a friend, subscribe on your favorite podcast platform, and we will see you next time on The Aspiring Solopreneur.